One small section of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, is set to be home for all at-risk overnight social services in Orange County. The planning board says concentration is not an issue. That's interesting, given the planning board does not know how many shelters there are.
Another concern that we've heard is that the guidelines didn't address the issue of overconcentration for homeless shelters specifically, since we only have one.
One homeless shelter? So let's get this straight. Mr. Collins attended 5 town council meetings, 6 shelter subcommittee meetings, 4 planning board meetings, all spent talking about shelters, and he doesn't even know how many shelters there are? So let's help you out. Here's the men's shelter, the women's shelter, all defined as shelters under the Land Use Management Ordinance, as shown here in an email by the Planning Department.
These facilities have significantly more public safety impacts than other social services in Chapel Hill, as shown in this incident data from the Chapel Hill Police Department. For some reason, neither the town nor the planning board brought this data to public attention. It took concerned citizens to submit it to the planning board. Apparently the planning board, through a special subcommittee headed by board chair Mr. Mike Collins, was prepared to create new shelter guidelines without such information. But that's not the whole story. We also asked the planning board to look at other at-risk facilities in the same area, such as the Freedom House Drug Detox and Rehab Center that detoxes 850 addicts a year and houses 22 beds in addition to that year-round. So you can't talk about overconcentration without looking at the existing number of at-risk beds in this area. There's 123 in the area. And on top of that, I'm going to add the proposed men's shelter. It's not possible to create sensible shelter siting guidelines if you ignore the existing at-risk overnight social services in a particular target area. Neighbors asked for sensible shelter guidelines like hundreds of other local governments throughout the country. They asked for the guidelines to apply to all shelters not yet built. Let's talk a moment about how the police record incidents. When an incident occurs, the officer records the incident and the actual location of the incident. They do not log the residence of those involved in the incident. Note that at this time, no arrests have been made, and the incident address has nothing to do with an arrest that may occur later. Once an arrest is made, even the arrest address is logged based on the actual location of where the arrest occurred, as shown by Lieutenant Gunner of the Chapel Hill Police Department. The arrest address has nothing to do with the arrestee's proclaimed residence. Unfortunately, the planning board chose to ignore real facts about public safety incidents recorded by police at Chapel Hill's most at-risk facilities. Mike Collins gave this reason for ignoring public safety data in his official testimony to the town of Chapel Hill.
Okay. And just we did talk with the police about the crime statistics too, and even they're a little bit hazy about the numbers sometimes, because lots of people who are arrested in the vicinity of the homeless shelter give that address as their address, and it's difficult or impossible to verify whether they're actually there or not. So it's hard to say how many of those are.
Clearly Mr. Collins did not get his statement from the police department, so where did he get it? Let us introduce the manager of the homeless shelter.
As far as the police blotters go, everyone who gets arrested in Chapel Hill gives 100 West Rosemary as their address. Most of them do not live with us.
So let's look at what was wrong with Mr. Collins' statements. First, it's the incident data that shows the impacts. Second, Mr. Collins is talking about arrest data. 75% of incidents have no arrest. Third, Mr. Collins' statements came from IFC and not from the Chapel Hill Police Department. And fourth, Mr. Collins' statement is incorrect. The arrest data uses the address where the arrest occurred as reported by the arresting officer.
Even they're a little bit hazy about the numbers sometimes, because lots of people who are arrested in the vicinity of the homeless shelter give that address as their address.
Everyone who gets arrested in Chapel Hill gives 100 West Rosemary as their address.
With regards to the notion that folks who've been arrested give the shelter address, I want to point out that a lot of the information that I give you in the incident information that the police gives you has nothing to do with where someone lives. It's where the incident occurred that the police officer recorded it to that site. And just in the talking about facts and making sure we're presenting things properly, I just caution you. Mike, I'd send you an email that if we're going to take Chief Curran's comments and use them, rely on them, you guys are going to rely on them to make decisions and discount the crime data and things like that, then I would like to either see that in writing or have Chief Curran come to this meeting.
During the public hearings that you had, did you have any neighbor input about the impact of current facilities on parks, residences? So did anyone come out and speak to current impacts of current facilities?
Oh, yes, yes.
And what kind of information did we get?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, generally negative, but I mean, part of the reason that we focus so much on data is
so that we can ignore Chapel Hill Police Department data that proves the impact of the most at-risk facilities. The Planning Board ignored our data on incidents and chose to focus on arrests, and what they said about arrests is not true. If you look at the arrest statistics where the arrest actually occurred, as recorded by police, again having nothing to do with where the arrestee claims that he or she lives, note here that the shelter address has the second highest number of arrests in Chapel Hill. To create shelter guidelines, the Planning Board Subcommittee constantly stressed the need for facts and consistently chose to ignore them. The facts are as follows. Impacts vary greatly by facility, and only a small number of facilities show large impacts. The fact is that data available from the Chapel Hill Police Department makes it clear that a small number of facilities have the greatest impacts. These are just a few of the examples of many major facts that were ignored by the Planning Board Subcommittee.